Hello, 742 staff, families, and community who are viewing this presentation. This is a presentation that I gave last night at the school board meeting. And for anybody who doesn't know me, I'm Lori Putnam, the superintendent. And we wanted to make sure that we got this information to all of our stakeholders because it's a really critical time for our schools and for public education funding in general. So today's presentation provides an overview of our preliminary budget forecast for the 25-26 school year. It is grounded in the current state funding landscape. As you know, most of our general revenue, about 85%, is tied directly to state allocations. So shifts in legislative funding have significant implications for our planning. Today we'll begin with a look at what we know from the governor's budget and current House and Senate proposals and explore how those have already impacted and may yet continue to impact our budget. We'll also share the ways we've responded, conservatively and cautiously, to the loss of legislative funding as we completed staffing for 25-26 as we prepare our budget for the board's approval in June. Before we begin considering the staffing decisions, we were already facing several key budget assumptions that placed significant strain on our general fund. First, we were seeing the expiration of $370,000 in one-time literacy aid. Its expiration creates an immediate gap in our ability to sustain those supports moving forward without identifying alternative funding sources. Second, we continue to experience the impact of unemployment costs for summer staff not being fully funded. For fiscal year 26, we are estimating a shortfall of $250,000 related to this ongoing issue. And while we've advocated at the state level for a more permanent solution, this remains a local liability that we must plan for. Third, the governor's proposed change to the compensatory revenue formula represents a significant concern. As proposed, it would revise the method by which districts calculate this critical funding stream, particularly impacting districts like ours with high direct certification rates. The result under the current proposal is a projected loss of $485,000 for our district. While this number may shift throughout the legislative process, it remains a key assumption for now and speaks to the broader issue of volatility in funding tied to student poverty indicators. Altogether, these three areas alone represent over $1.1 million in anticipated reductions or underfunded obligations before we even began staffing considerations. It underscores the importance of grounding our staffing and budgeting in conservative, transparent assumptions so we can navigate this next phase with clarity and shared understanding. So to proactively address the known shortfall of $620,000, made up of the expiration of one-time literacy aid, again that was $370,000, and the unfunded unemployment insurance costs, $250,000, we implemented a series of central office and enrollment-based staffing reductions. You can see on the screen what those the enrollment-based FTE reductions were, as well as the district cuts that we had to make. These decisions were made carefully and strategically with the intent to protect direct classroom instruction as much as possible while still meeting our fiduciary responsibility. Key reductions include the elimination of 5 central office positions, including the Executive Director of Special Projects, the Learning and Teaching Director, 2 Learning and Teaching Coordinators, and the District Truancy and Attendance Coordinator. We also consolidated special education leadership, replacing the special education assistant superintendent with a single executive director role. In communications, we reduced the director position from full-time to 0.7, aligning support capacity with budget constraints while maintaining essential services. Additionally, we made enrollment-based adjustments to classroom teaching staff, reducing 2.5 FTE or full-time equivalents based on actual and projected student counts. This ensures our staffing levels remain in balance with enrollment, which is, of course, a key sustainability practice. These reductions totaled approximately $620,000, covering the gap caused by those known budget pressures. While difficult for sure, they reflect our commitment to long-term fiscal health and our goal to protect student-facing roles and programs whenever possible. This slide walks through the projected impact of the governor's initial hold harmless proposal related to compensatory revenue. While the name suggests districts would be protected from funding losses, that's unfortunately not the case for St. Cloud area schools. Under this plan, our district would experience a $485,000 reduction compared to current law. That's a significant shortfall, and it's worth stating clearly. This version of hold harmless does not, in fact, hold us harmless. In our district, compensatory revenue is allocated entirely to staffing. It funds district support positions like interventionists, multilingual teachers, and student support staff who work with our learners who need the most. Because of the way this revenue is tied to staffing, we had to make initial staffing decisions based on this lower allocation amount. The result is a district-wide reduction of 6 FTE, which directly affects our ability to provide targeted academic and social-emotional supports for students. After staffing was complete, the governor released additional budget recommendations, and the House and Senate have also released their budget proposals. Some of these proposals include additional reductions, and others include additional new funding. However, we are not counting on new funding being likely, given the state's overall budget forecast and how far apart the three proposals are. The most concerning aspect of the House and Senate proposals is the Senate's compensatory hold harmless and the House's proposal to eliminate school library aid. The Senate compensatory proposal would result in a decrease of over $1.1 million, which is over $600,000 less than what we allocated for staffing. The one positive is that all three have included one-time funding to cover 100% of employment costs for fiscal year 26. So it is likely that this funding will be provided. While the district has already made reductions to cover the unfunded unemployment costs, it is likely that these reductions could be needed to cover further loss of revenue elsewhere, such as compensatory revenue or school library aid. In addition to state-level funding changes, several other factors are putting additional pressure on our 25-26 budget planning. First, paid family leave will add a new financial obligation. Starting January 1, 2026, a 0.88% payroll tax will go into effect. For our district, this is estimated to cost approximately $650,000 in fiscal year 26 alone. While the intent of the policy is supportive, the financial burden currently falls to employers, and we are preparing for that impact. Second, we've budgeted federal funding allocations conservatively, estimating a 5% reduction in title allocations. This projection is based on the anticipated drop in free and reduced price lunch percentages across the state, a downstream effect of the Universal Free Meals Program. Since federal funding formulas rely on these counts, we're seeing potential declines despite continued local need. Third, we're accounting for one-time local costs, including city special assessments and a special election. Together, those items total approximately $350,000, costs that must be covered through our fund balance as they fall outside of regular operating expenses. And lastly, we continue to see increased special education needs, which I'll speak to more specifically on the next slide. These rising needs come with staffing and service implications that our general fund must absorb when categorical aid falls short. Each of these items, while outside of our direct control, contributes to the broader budget picture we are navigating this year. One of the most significant pressures on our budget and our staffing continues to be the rising need for special education services. Between the 23-24 and 24-25 school years, we've seen an 8.9% increase in students receiving special education services. That's an additional 251 students. This growth is not only substantial in terms of numbers, but also brings with it increased complexity in student needs, service plans, and compliance obligations. To respond, we've had to make targeted staffing adjustments. We reallocated 7 FTE from within our compensatory holdback allocations to support special education staffing where the need is most acute. In addition, we've added 6 new FTE positions funded from projected increases in special education revenue. This approach allows us to stay compliant with federal and state requirements while continue to meet student needs in the least restrictive environment. Even with these increases, the demand continues to outpace the categorical funding provided, which is why we must often rely on general fund dollars to cover the gap. This is another example of how student-centered budgeting requires us to make difficult trade-offs while focused on our most vulnerable learners. In the response to the ongoing budget uncertainty and the specific risks posed by proposed state legislation, our board legislative committee took action by sending a formal letter to our area legislators. That communication outlined the potential impacts of proposed funding changes on our district and urged reconsideration of key provisions. In particular, we expressed significant concern about the proposed hold harmless compensatory revenue formula changes, which, as you've seen, would result in a substantial funding loss for our district. We emphasize that this plan fails to account for districts like ours that serve high numbers of students qualifying through direct certification, effectively punishing districts doing the right work to reach underserved families. We also raised serious concerns about proposed cuts to school library aid. For us, this is not just a line item. It's a dedicated funding stream we've already incorporated into our staffing and programming plans. Its removal will force us to reevaluate key literacy and resource supports in our schools. Our message was clear. These changes are not abstract policy shifts. They have real, immediate implications for students, staff, and programs. And we continue to stay actively engaged as the legislative session moves forward, and we encourage our community to do the same. As we look to 25-26, we remain committed to fiscal responsibility and to maintaining a balanced budget, even in the absence of an operating referendum. Despite significant and growing cross-subsidies in special education and English learning services, we continue to make disciplined, student-centered decisions that prioritize our classrooms and students. Our approach reflects a core belief that we must do everything we can with the resources we have while continuing to advocate for the funding our students deserve. Thank you to our board, to our community, to our staff and our students and families for your support, your partnership, and your shared commitment to our schools and community.